Hello, welcome to the Coaxum Report. This is Terry Coaxum, and I am your host for today. And I am super delighted to be joined by my sister from another Mister, Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown. How are you?
Girl, I am thrilled to be here with you. I'm doing fine now that I'm here with you on this wonderful program. God bless you with this endeavor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, for those that are listening, you can also catch us on Roku. You can catch us on Android and Amazon Fire. And you can also watch live here on our TV.network. I encourage you to download the app so you can catch us at any time. And Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown, in case you don't know, this show is shown all over the world. And so don't be surprised if your Caribbean friends tap you and tell you they saw you in Trinidad, Jamaica,
Wow, that's
or some
awesome.
parts else in the Caribbean. And also those of you that have access to radio, you can listen to us on WXTX Bloomberg Radio. Welcome to
Excellent.
Coaching Report.
Wow.
So I am talking to my sister from another mister, and in full disclosure, Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown and I, we've had occasion to sit down, break bread, and like write it down on a napkin, our vision for whatever else that we're doing. And so I'm delighted to have you on the show today just to talk about your business, talk about
Mm.
your ministry, talk about some of the barriers, the best practices, and big ideas. And of course, we're going to end with some solutions. So, who is my sister, Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown? Tell my listening audience a little bit about who you are, sis.
Oh my goodness. Lisa Jenkins Brown, no hyphen. People have put the hyphen between my name. I got married last year, 16 months, January 10th.
Yes.
Yes. And so,
Congratulations.
thank you so much. And so, my middle name is now Jenkins. I dropped my middle name that I have been using all these years, and so my company is LDJ Connections.
All right
And
now.
and I am looking to change that and totally and rebrand it and reintroduce it to LGB Connections.
That's right.
And what LGB Connections, and actually LGB Global Connections, because it's really a global organization,
Yes.
diversity, equity, inclusion. But we
Mhm.
go deeper than that. We talk about really transforming culture and not just going into an organization and giving a training or giving a keynote, but really making sure that there's lasting change because it's so
Right.
important. Organizations and statistics show that organizations that have diversity initiatives that are really interwoven into the company, where it's not just a checkbox for
That's right.
compliance sake, that those companies are more productive than others. And so I go in, I do workshops, I do keynotes, I do seminars on particularly unconscious bias training. I've been asked to do something on allyship for a company in Wisconsin
Oh,
next month.
nice.
Yeah. And so I'm also working with the American Management Association as a
Yes, AMA,
facilitator.
AMA. That's your
Yeah.
baby.
Doing diversity training in their certificate program. So
Nice.
I'm excited about this. I really am.
I'm excited to have you on this show, and you have such a wealth of knowledge and information. Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown is also a pastor
Yes.
as well as an educator, so it's truly a blessing to have you on. Now, how did you get to where you are, Dr. Brown? Like, what are some of the things that really led you to be the change agent that you are today? I mean, education wise, stellar. Community wise, another. I mean, you're doing so much for so many
Yeah.
people. Mom, you're a sister, a soror. You got a lot of hats.
I do, and I just found out last year, I think it was, that there's a name for someone like me. We're called, it's a multi hyphenate. I don't know if you've heard that term. It's a person, and some people say that you can't have too many irons in the fire, but a multi hyphenate is a person that does a number of different things, has expertise in a number of different areas. And as I'm getting older, I have learned to own that I do them well. Too
That's
many
right.
of us sisters do not say or want to even put it in the atmosphere that we do things well.
That's
But
right.
I have to own that. And
That's
I'm
right.
sure you understand it because I know
Yep.
you, Dr. Terry.
That's
You
right.
have irons in as well, and you do a lot of things well, quite well.
That's
But
right.
that question, I have always grown up. My parents were both union people.
Ah,
My parents had me at a late age. My mother was 49.
oh, God
They
bless
told
you.
her that she had a tumor, and
Oh,
they found out that she did not have a tumor.
ah,
That she was
not
having
a
a baby.
tumor.
She was having a baby.
Wow.
And they told her at the age of 49, because she was already going through the change. They said back then that she had to have a medical abortion because her health would be in danger.
Oh, wow.
And she says, "No, I'm not having a medical abortion. I'm going to have this girl." And that's what she said before I was born. She said, "I'm having a girl." My brother, my only
Wow.
biological brother, he was like in his late 20s, early 30s, and she had wanted a girl. And I start off with that story to talk about the tenacity in the face of
Mhm,
no. And I grew up with parents who migrated from the deep south during that great migration.
mhm,
And so they became union people. They were not educated with degrees like you and I have.
mhm,
My
mhm.
father could barely even write his name
Wow.
because we're talking about the deep, deep, deep South when they had to quit jobs. I mean, quit
That's
school.
right, to work in the fields. That's
That's
right.
right. People forget.
Mhm,
People don't think about that. So I grew up with that tenacity. And growing up in a Baptist church, my pastor at the time was a pastor who was very involved in civil rights
that's right.
and social justice, Dr. Timothy P. Mitchell of the
That's
Ebenezer
right.
Baptist Church. And so I grew up in that atmosphere of you've got to get it done. That's one. And also that there are people that we must work for, okay, in order to get things done, that we've got to
Mhm.
work for the least of these. We've got to pull others up as well. And so I just always grew up with that. My parents were part of every organization that you can imagine so that they could get ahead. That's how
Wow.
they were able to purchase their house, by making connections. You know
That's
about
right.
this
That's right.
because they didn't have the
Connections
South.
matter. Relationships
They
matter.
matter. So
Yeah.
they were part of the political organization, the Frederick Douglass Association. But before that, they were part of the North Side Democratic Club, which was the Democratic Club that was mainly mostly Italians
That's right.
in that time in
That's right.
Queens. So I grew up knowing that in order to make things happen, I had to have a tenacity. I had to be in really hard headed, is what my mother would call me at times. Because when people say to me, no, I'm like,
You're
oh,
like,
you're
how
not
do we
talking.
get to yes?
Right. But really, even before that, it's like you're not. They can't be talking to me. You said women don't become pastors. Who you're talking to? It's like you're not talking to me, and I'm totally tunnel vision. Like, no,
That's
I
right.
know this is
That's
what
right.
I am to do.
That's
So
right.
that's how I've always been, Dr. Terry. That's just how it's always been.
Wow, this is amazing. This is amazing. I want to step back for a minute because I
Yeah.
want to talk about the power of no, right? So there's so many things that as women, as entrepreneurs, as moms, as educators, we get told no, no, and no. But your mother had the unmitigated tenacity to say yes to
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
despite what the doctor said. She was just
Yeah.
like, and she was clear, I'm having a girl.
That's what
I
she
don't know
said.
what y'all doing on these streets, but I know what God has given to me. And
Yeah.
to move forward at 49 years old and have a baby, knowing that, you have a son that's already in your 20s, right? So it is a change. And I smile about it because I have the honor and pleasure of raising my great nephew,
Mm.
who I got when he was 6 months old. And I'm celebrating, the 27th anniversary of my 25th birthday. And so getting a 6 month old who's now 5 was very different. And
Yeah.
so I can only imagine back then someone as your mom that was so involved,
Yep.
that had wore so many hats and was so many things to so many people.
Yeah.
She had to tap into that network
Oh.
to be able to do the things that she did to instill in you
Yeah.
everything that is great. And so I commend your
Yeah.
mom and in her life and her legacy, and your
Yeah.
dad for just saying no to what the doctor said and saying
Yeah.
yes to what God said.
Yeah.
And that's a nugget in itself. That's
Absolutely.
truly a nugget, especially if you're telling me to terminate something that I already know God has given me for a season and a reason.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when God gives it to us, we've got to be able to run with it
That's
and
right.
model that for others. I mean, you
That's
talk about
right.
all that she had to do. I mean, my earliest memories of her are at during election day,
Wow.
getting up early because she would open the polls.
That's right.
And when me sitting in the corner,
Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
I can see PS 127 in Queens with
Wow.
my Lego sets, with my books,
That's right.
with my Chinese food takeout, while she was doing
What she
voter,
needed to do
what she
to
needed to do.
encourage and inspire and get out that vote because she knew the importance.
Yep. And there I was watching her. And at
That's
that
right.
time, every time she went into the voting, that we had those big old voting booths back then with the red lever. No, people don't know about those. The red lever.
Yeah, they, no, 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 no. That's
I
some
went,
history right there.
I went into that with her. And
Wow.
I think, I don't know if people can do that now, but I went there and she would put my hand on the lever and she would do what she needed to do. And she would
And
take
then
my
you would
hand,
pull it.
pull it.
So you
And
had a voice. Let me tell you something about that though. My youngest, who's 27 years old, I used to take her in with me all the time. And I remember when she first learned to read. And so she's going down the ballot and she's seeing the names. And maybe a day or so later, I went to an event and she pointed out the assembly member and said, "We voted for you." I said, "Oh no, you can't go to polls with me no more. What if I didn't? What if I didn't vote for you? She done told it, y'all. She
to
done
toll it all.
our vote is our vote." She was
Yeah,
like, "Oh no, no, no. I want you to know we're responsible."
that's
And
right.
so I laugh about that because she couldn't have been no more than 6, 7 years old, but she knew that name was on the ballot and she made sure she understood that she knew the importance of
Right.
voting for her, right? So
Exactly.
when you say that, that cracked me up because that thing still comes to my mind. And I take Andrew in with me now too. And it's really going to be interesting to see what he does when he's reading and writing
Yeah.
and able to make these connections as well. So I want to commend you on that. Another nugget that you gave us, you got to get it done. It's so many times that we don't get the luxury of just sitting around waiting on a white horse to come in and save us from whatever they think they're going to save us from, or even a brown horse. It doesn't matter what color the horse
Right.
is. They
Right.
know horse is coming to save us,
Mm-mm.
right?
Mm-mm.
You got to get it done. And
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs, I tell my entrepreneurs all the time that if you don't plan, you will fail.
Yes.
So don't get ready, so be ready so you don't have to get ready. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, if you don't know your vision and your mission of your organization and understand it from the rooter to the tutor, you're
Mhm.
not going to be successful.
That's right.
You have to invest the time, the energy, and the education into understanding what you are doing.
Yep.
And I think that one of the things that make me smile about you, Dr. Lisa, is diversity and inclusion plus. It's not just diversity and inclusion.
Right.
You bring the whole gamut to the floor, and we're no longer checking the boxes. You
Right.
have to be responsible. If you're going out doing this workshop and training, folks have to be responsible for the part that they play in all
Right.
this.
Right.
And so I just want to commend you. I had the honor and the pleasure to recommend you to an organization, and
Mhm.
they were very impressed
Thank
by the
you.
workshop you did around just that,
I remember
especially
that.
understanding, this unconscious bias that exists. Some
Mhm.
of us don't want to talk about it. I say let's talk about it up front and personal
Yeah.
because a history that's not remembered will be repeated.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be talked about. It has
That's
to
right.
be. And when we're talking, one of the things I think that some people that don't look like us don't understand, it's not about just black and brown people. When you're talking
No,
about inclusion,
that's right.
you're talking about
Everybody.
everyone. Everyone brings
That's
something
right.
to the table. So we are not excluding anyone. We are including everyone so that creativity can occur, so that
That's
new
right.
ideas can come to the table, so that everyone can be profitable. And
That's
so
right.
my thing is shifting
That's
our
right.
world and your bottom line at the same time. Because again, companies that are diverse and inclusive, not just diverse, but
That's right.
inclusive, are companies that are profitable. So
That's right.
we're shifting the world while we are changing the bottom line as well.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that has to happen is that we do have to share our collective synergies and we have to
Mm.
share our collective history in order to be tolerant of others. You
Yes.
know, it's one thing when you live a little bit in a bubble and don't see people outside of what you look like, outside of what your family makeup is. It's a little hard to kind of understand what they're going through
Yeah.
until you are able to have conversations, be included,
Yeah.
right? Be at the table. And again, I tell my students all the time, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
That's
It's
right.
not the decisions I'm being made. They being made. You
Right.
just on the menu. They being made about you,
That's
not
right.
for you and to you. And so a part of diversity and inclusion is really being at the table or making your own table if that table is not inclusive of what your beliefs are.
Mhm.
And also standing on your integrity, keeping your integrity intact. Be clear about who you are and whose you are, and don't just swing with the wind.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we all have a voice. We all have a history.
Yeah.
We all come with our backpack of experiences, and it's up to each one of us to share that synergy and that energy with others in order to make the world a better place. And I mean,
Absolutely.
that sounds a little cliche, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. I mean, I love it. You know, I tell my students something similar because at the end of the season, at the end of the term, I normally tell them, I says, listen, you've heard that the people say that the world is waiting for you. I says, I want to let you know that there are places where the world is not waiting for you, but you must insert yourself. And you
That's
not
right.
only must bring your own chair. You people have said you got to bring your own chair. I says, no, you don't have to just bring your own chair. You might have to even create your own table.
That's
You're
right.
going to have to
That's right.
oftentimes bring your own tools to create your own table so that you can show up for yourself, for your community, so
That's
that
right.
you can make this world a better place because there are people that don't know that you are needed, but
That's
you
right.
have to know that you are needed. And that's what's so important for us.
Right. And
That's
they
what
have
Green
to be
Library is all
intentional.
about.
They have to be intentional, and you have to be your authentic self.
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
end of the day, you show up, but you show up authentically. You
yes.
show up intentionally. You know,
I
I tell
love
my students all the time because we talked about this. We have something similar with our connections, right? My
it.
business is Coaxum Connects, connecting you because relationships matter. And
Yeah,
of course, your LJ connections, LJ Global,
yes,
LJB Global connections, right? And it's all about those relationships that matter. And I try to instill in my students and my family and my children, this greater than you mentality, because this world is no longer this box. You're
yeah,
literally able to touch beyond the boundaries that you can even see,
right.
right? So I can be sitting here having a conversation with someone in Dubai. I
Yeah.
can be sitting here having a conversation with someone in a continent, and it all matters. I remember I had the opportunity to have one of my council members. We went to high school together in Walterboro, South Carolina.
Mhm.
His name is Philip Taylor. And so Philip and I had him on the call, and he started getting text messages from the continent. Someone in South Africa was saying, "I see you."
Wow. Isn't
And
that
I
something?
love the show. And thank you for sharing your experiences. And that's what this show is about, Dr. Lisa.
Yeah,
I want individuals to understand, just as you can do it, just as I can do it, we all collectively can do the things that we are here to do.
yeah.
And another thing that you shared kind of really makes me understand that we're kindred spirits in more ways than one, right? When you talked about, when your mother found out that she was having a baby girl. Well, she found out she was having a baby and she determined she was having a baby girl. The answer was no, and to terminate something that God had already promised her. And
Mhm.
so I share with you that, I was a premature baby. And the reason I
Mm.
was premature is because my father actually beat me out of my mother's stomach. He was abusive and
Mm.
she was a teenage mom,
Wow.
and they were married very, very young, and all
Wow.
the elements were a part of it. But I'm
Mm.
here for a season and a reason. I tell people all
Yeah.
the time, I'm like, listen, you talk about God, I know all about it. I'm in the passenger seat and he's the driver. So
Yes.
all of the things that I've been able to accomplish, from having an outhouse, and most of the people my age don't even know what that is, right? That's
Wow.
the poverty that we lived in the South, to having an outhouse, to working for the first Black president of the United States of America. That is
Yeah.
a powerful testimony. But again, my grandmother prayed for me.
Yep.
Every time I walked through the room, she prayed for me. Sometimes I was scared. I was like, oh, Lord, here we go again. But she understood what I was coming against in my
Yeah.
life. And
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. And
Yeah.
so I came to New York at 16 years old with a box of vanilla wafers and a clothes in my back and an idea I was going to go to John Jay College because I
Mm.
saw this poster up on the subway saying John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I not only did I go to college and I accomplished it, I became that poster as a CUNY
I
success
know. I
story.
was getting ready to say that because I've seen
That's
that post.
God.
I've walked up and down. I walked, oh, there's Terry Coaxum. They're like, who? That's my girl, Terry, right up there.
That's
Yeah.
God. That's
Yes.
God. And so that's why it's so important for us to get on a show and talk about these barriers because there's tons of barriers to our success. I want to talk now a little bit about some best practices. Like, what are some of the things that you're able to do in your industry that changes the game for everybody else? And then I want to talk about some big ideas. Like, what are some of the big ideas? I want to talk about best practices because a lot of us don't even realize because it's so, we do it because what you said in the beginning, we got to get it done, but you don't realize what got to getting it done doesn't mean that to everybody. And so
Yeah.
the fact that you are able to get it done is a best practice. That's something
Right.
that you are able to share with individuals that don't understand. Like, this is what we need to do. Keeping our children, raising our children, going to the PTA, getting the laundry up the stairs, the grocery.
Yeah.
These are things we had to do. It
Yeah.
wasn't something like, well, maybe today I'll decide that I'm going to. No,
No,
we
no,
got it
no.
done.
Yeah, you've got to do it. And let me just say also, at this point in my life, and my son is grown. I was a single mother
Yeah.
for much of this time. I mentioned how I got married last year. This is my first marriage. I was never married. I raised my
Wow.
son on my own, like
That's right. That's
me,
right.
me and I. And
That's
so
right.
I had a lot of moving parts. And so I had to really navigate.
Mm-hmm.
How can I navigate? What can I do? Because raising us a black man, a black male from
Mm-hmm.
birth, and then at that time going to seminary, going to becoming the first on staff minister at a church. I
That's
mean,
right.
full-time staff at Calvary Baptist in Jamaica, Queens.
That's right.
I had to develop a rhythm, and it's
Right.
actually a
A
rhythm that
rhythm. I like that.
I
Develop
had to
a
develop a
rhythm. I
rhythm.
like that.
You
Take out
know,
your pen and she getting dropping nuggets. Develop
I
a
had to
rhythm.
develop a rhythm, and I remember, my particular rhythm when I was raising my son, and I remember I was full time in ministry at the church, not a pastor, but I was full time on staff as the
Mm-hmm.
executive minister. I was also in seminary,
Mm-hmm.
and I was raising my son, which meant that not only did I have to make sure that he was going to school, getting his schoolwork done, he was involved in activities.
That's right.
Deaconess Luther May had me at activities. You betcha Jordan Jenkins was going to be in activities,
That's
okay?
right.
Whether it was
Absolutely.
swimming or soft baseball or whatever it was. So I remember my routine began in the evening, for instance, putting him to bed at 8 o'clock.
That's right.
Okay, 8 o'clock. Maybe nine, the latest, depending upon what was going on. I would go to sleep when he would go to sleep.
That's right.
And I would wake up at 12 midnight, 12:30. That's when I would study.
That's
That's when
right.
I would write my work. I remember writing my credo,
That's right.
writing my grad papers, studying, getting all of my essays together. I would do all of that between the hours of 12:30, and 3:30, 4 o'clock. Between 3:30, 4 o'clock, I would go back to sleep, and I would wake up at 6 a.m.
Wow.
At 6 a.m., I would get up before he would get up, and I would make sure breakfast was done. I
Wow.
would make sure my own clothes were ready and I'm getting dressed. And then once I'm dressed and ready, then I got him dressed and ready.
Wow. That's a
And
rhythm.
it's a
That is
rhythm.
a rhythm.
It's a rhythm. Take him to school, come back from taking him to school, work out either at my home doing yoga or jogging around, in my neighborhood. By that time, it was around 10 o'clock. And I would, or 9:30, and I would go into the church.
That's right.
And I'm there all day, every day. Okay. Some people might have to adjust because they can't go in at 10. They
Right.
have so you have to adjust.
That's
So
right.
you have to make sure that you understand what it is that your particular rhythm is that's going to make it work for you and your family or just yourself.
Okay, we're going to pause right there. And I want you guys to really just soak in what Dr. Lisa is talking about. When we're talking about our rhythm, we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back on time management and finding your rhythm. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Metro New York's port services are currently constrained and challenged in facilitating the handling of international cargo. It's time for a whole new ballgame. Just 55 miles north of the city, Stewart Airport, closed during the base realignment, is an underutilized resource that could be maximized and bring growth to the area and relieve New York City. It's an ideal place for a thriving supply chain center of regional excellence, called SCORE. We intend to support the New York and New Jersey Port Authority's commitment to the New York International Plaza, putting it at the forefront of a transformation of regional global trade, telecommunications, and economic growth. A logistics-based regenerative smart city that supplies an interactive platform of data and document interoperability to optimize resources. SCORE will transform this location into a thriving hub that can process and distribute cargo via various methods of transportation, elevating it to one of the world's best intermodal ports. We aim to build a cybersecure network operations center that enables customers to share data in real time across the supply chain and across the whole region, utilizing eco-friendly practices to keep things running efficiently. And it doesn't stop there. Not only will SCORE develop high-speed wireless networks in a data-driven city to improve logistics and facilitate international trade, it will also create critical infrastructure for regional economic development. By optimizing the business environment, attracting startups and investment, supporting the development of high-value industries such as medical, education, technology, and hospitality, creating new employment opportunities for the region. SCORE will inject vibrancy and inspire prosperity in an underutilized area to develop a greener and more livable smart city that thrives, bringing excellence to the Hudson Valley. It's a game changer. Visit IC Logistics to learn how you can support this SCORE economic development initiative at Stewart Airport.
I used to watch BET, MTV, VH1, now I watch Tempo. Soca, Calypso, Reggae Dance Hall. Don't stall, better get tuned in to the tempo. Don't have cable, they got an app. Go to your app store, download that. Whether it's tourism, cuisine, or the social scenes, if it ain't Tempo, it's a rap. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. It's the latest in Caribbean news. Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too. Tempo. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. It's the latest in Caribbean news. Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too. Tempo.
This is Terry Coaxum, and I'm your host today. And I am joined by Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown, who's been dropping some nuggets. She's been dropping nuggets about, yeah, basically, being here, not accepting no, gotta get it done, work for the least of them, and developing your rhythm. So, Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown, thank you again for being on a Coaxum Report. And so when we went on commercial break, we were talking about
Yeah.
finding your rhythm. And I can definitely associate with that because I wrote a book called Peaceful Pondering, A Busy Woman's Guide to Inner
Mhm.
Peace. And
Yep.
in it, it was finding your inner calm, finding that space within you to get the things done that you need to get done. And one of the things that you talk about in finding your rhythm is just that, right? You
Yeah.
talked about assessing all the things that you have to accomplish and
Yep.
integrating them into your life. There's no such thing as balance, right? Because
No.
something's going to take priority over something else. But
Right.
you were able to integrate these things into your life. And if someone says to you, okay, as a single parent, it's very hard to have to work a full-time job, go to school, and have your child involved in activities.
Mhm.
And what you said was you could get it done. And you were
Yeah.
able to get it done. Like you're a testament of how to get it done. And it's truly a pleasure to share that with you because this is one of the things that actually developed you into the great woman that you are right now,
Mhm.
being able to get these things done, being able to include family, be inclusive in all that you're doing, including your family, including your network, connecting to the individuals that you needed to connect to get to that next level, but more importantly, always looking out for the least of them,
Yeah.
always making sure that those that did not have the access that you may have had, you made sure you included them in that. And that's why it's so appropriate for you to be teaching diversity and inclusion because you've always been very inclusive. You've always
Mm.
been that person
Yeah.
that was looking for ways to make sure that you're bringing along your tribe and your squad. And so
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for that. So developing your rhythm. One of
Yeah.
the other, what are one of the other best practices? Because I know there's a ton of them. I told you I get your pens out, magnets. We want to make sure that you are writing these things down and you're implementing them in your life.
Yeah.
Listening to a seminar or reading a book means nothing if you're not able to integrate
Yeah.
the knowledge, skills, and ability into your real life.
So thank you for asking, and it just came to me because I mean, I'm saying, what do I say? Because there's a lot of stuff that I've
Oh yeah,
done as far as
oh, yeah.
as far as making things happen, and that's not a brag. That's like really one of those things. I got to make it happen. What am I
That's
going to
right.
do? Because
That's right.
we don't do no, we don't do no's.
That's right.
So, so just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to the young people at my church, and I pulled out a I should have it. I have it over there. Actually, I think it's over there, but I'm not going to run and get it. But it's a calendar, a book calendar journal from 1989. Okay,
What?
I graduated. Actually, and I have some early because I graduated college in '88. I graduated high school in '83. And
Wow.
I started doing this in when I was in college, actually when I was in high school. So it's really a calendar.
We really are kindred spirits, right? I graduated high school at 16 years old in 88.
Wow.
I started at John Jay College in 89.
Wow. Wow.
So we
Wow.
are kindred spirits.
So I don't know if you kept yeah, you should have told you if I knew you were going to ask that question, I would have had it to show you because I showed the young people. I opened
Wow.
and I showed them because when I started keeping this, I was younger than them. And it's called At a Glance. Many people might remember the
Yep,
old
at a
At a
glance. I used
Glance.
to love at a glance. I used to
At a
have one
Glance.
of those at a glance when I was in the DA's
And
office.
right,
That's
and
right.
it had the dates on the
I
side,
did.
but I
Yep.
pretty much ignore the dates. I wrote my own. I'm sorry, not the time. It had the times, like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. But
That's
I
right.
just remember I would write 9 a.m. this, 10 a.m. that, and I would write down my schedule.
Right.
And so at that time, I opened it up to show them because, like I said, I was younger when I kept that journal than some of them, and many of them don't keep a calendar. I'm like, how do you not keep a calendar
That's right.
with all that you're doing? And so you would open it up. And on the calendar are things like, this is from 1989 or whatever. And I had earlier ones as well, but that was the only one I could put my hands on. I had on for one day, I had choir rehearsal.
Wow.
I had exams to study for. I had go to this temp agency for your job, because I was temping at that time. So it had Cosmopolitan Temp Agency. Okay. Not then. Okay. It had also modeling audition, because I used to model at that time too.
Wow.
Okay? I was runner up to Miss New York State at one point in time. And so I had modeling auditions. I had modeling shows on there. I had at one point in time, I was also an on-air announcer for a gospel station in New Jersey. I had, like I said, 2 different choir rehearsals, my church choir and my community choir.
Wow.
I also sang with Love Fellowship at one time as well. So I had to leave Queens, go to Brooklyn for Love Fellowship. All of that was on my calendar. And they're like, what is? I'm like, that's my day schedule.
That's right.
And so when people talk to me about, I want to be, I try to be understanding. My husband says I got to be more understanding. I'm like, he's the one. He's like, you got to be understanding. He's like, because you come from this different mindset. I come from this mindset where you got to get it done.
That's right.
And I kept a schedule.
That's right.
Because look, what you talked about, a nugget. Our brains can only take but so much.
That's right.
The cognitive ability that we have is limited for everybody, even the geniuses. And I am not a genius. People say, "Oh, you're this." I'm really not. I really am not. I write it down. I don't keep everything in my head.
But you know what? Write it down and make it plain, right? Write it down and make it plain. And one of my number one things that I follow, if it's not on the calendar,
it's not happening.
It doesn't work.
Right. It doesn't work. And it's not happening. And it's not happening.
It doesn't work. If your piss poor planning it's not going to be my emergency.
No.
You cannot come drop your stuff in my lap and then I have to change what I'm doing to accomplish what I've set out to do today, because you didn't plan properly. And I told my children that. No, they clear. I'm like, you cannot drop that in my lap. If it's an emergency, it's just that. It's an emergency. It doesn't happen all the time.
Everything can't be an emergency. Every day is not an emergency.
Everything can't be an emergency, because nothing is emergency, right?
Right.
So calendar it. If it's on the calendar, you can see the things that you're trying to accomplish and trying to do. And if you need to switch some things around, you can, because that's what the integration part is about.
Sure.
That's a huge nugget. Having people understand. And now you have this little thing. You can definitely just put it down.
Absolutely. And I'm big on to-do lists. I love, right now I do, I have on my iPad, I use Note Shelf. Some people use Notability or what have you. I use Note Shelf. And this is my task list.
Wow.
Okay? I love crossing out. I may not cross everything out. Okay. But I cross out some stuff. I love crossing things off of my task list. And then I move it over to the next day, whatever it is that I've not been able to accomplish.
And that's a nugget right there. That right there is a nugget. Being able to use the technology to make your life easier. You're working smarter, not harder.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one other that's similar to the calendar. I've begun, and I've not been using this as much, but I find it helpful. I must incorporate it. It must become my own habit. So I'm saying that to myself. Blocking out time blocking. Right. So not just putting something on your calendar, but for instance, if I'm going to write a sermon or a keynote or a workshop, okay? I'm doing course creations as well, digital course creations I'm working on. How long is that going to take? Put that on the calendar, not just my appointment with the doctor or my appointment, with Terry Coaxum.
Or with a student, right.
Put my tasks on the calendar. How long should that take? And block that out. And I do color coding because, I'm ADHD, and people will laugh and say, "Oh, great." And I'm like, no, boo, I got papers. I am ADHD. Okay. I found out when my son was ADHD that I'm ADHD. And that's another story because I didn't even talk about how they wanted to put him in special ed, but he was so intelligent. He just needed a different environment. And I had to fight the Board of Ed. And
That's
so
right.
people are like, you need to do a course on how to navigate the special ed system because our Black and brown kids are tunneled into that.
That's
But
right.
I made
Absolutely.
sure he was in an appropriate school system with smaller classrooms, but not a dumbed down a curriculum. And I shouldn't use that
Absolutely.
word, but a
Absolutely.
curriculum that was not for him.
That's right.
So what I'm saying is the time blocking is something that
Yeah, and
we
time blocking is important. And also setting an alarm.
oh
Setting an
please.
alarm. I find when I have something to do that's really important, I time block it and then I set an alarm. Here's the amount of time that I need to be able to dedicate to this. And I have to come back to it. I'll come back to it. But setting that alarm gives me that sense of accountability for myself. Because
Absolutely.
I need an accountability partner. Ain't no future in front. There's so many things that we have up here of the things that we need to accomplish in a day. Like I just saw your to-do list. You have about 20 things on there. I tell my students all the time, 5 major things.
Yeah,
Don't
I
try
know
to
that.
put 20 things on there because what's going to happen is you're going to feel unaccomplished at the end of the day.
I've been told that as well. And I've read that all of the best productivity manuals and books will tell you exactly what you said. But I say that, I got to do what works for me. And
That's
I'm a
right.
visual person.
That's the other part of it.
I'm
That's right.
visual. I need to
That's right.
see it. And if I don't accomplish it, listen, I don't feel guilty. Okay. I just, like I said,
I
I
do.
have no guilt.
Ain't a future friend. I'm like, I didn't get to that.
I have no guilt. I would just move that baby over to the next day. And what I do also is on the side, I put like an A. So you'll see over here, I have A, B, or C, D, like as far as the priority. I will prioritize.
So you prioritize it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if I don't get to it, I just don't get to it. It goes to the next day.
And let me tell you what else is a nugget. Now that you're talking about blocking time, prioritizing, putting it on your calendar, and having things to do lists. Another thing that I think is really important is having an administrative day, right? I think it's really important to have a digital detox / administrative day where you're literally sitting down thinking about here are the things that I need to accomplish. If it's after church on Sunday with a cup of tea, if it's early on Monday morning where you're sitting planning out your whole week, but you definitely need to have some time away from everything else because we got 20 things going on at any given time to say, okay, here's what I want to accomplish this week. Because a vision, if you don't have a vision for where you're going, you're never going to get there.
That's right.
So if I say to myself, I want to make $50,000 a month just in business. That's all I want to do, 50,000 plus. And I never cap it at just 50,000 plus. Then I have to sit down once a week and write down, how do I plan to accomplish this in 4 weeks? Right?
Right.
And then when I write it down, I make it plain. And it's so, the universe and God is so amazing. When you speak those things into existence,
Dr. Terry, you are preaching right there. Okay. I'm telling you, the whole idea of writing it down and visiting it on a regular basis.
That's right.
People talk about, we're at the new year, and I'm so grateful that you have me on at the beginning. I feel like this is a big deal. I'm on Dr. Terry's show at the beginning of the year, But people will do a resolution. They'll begin something and say, "This is my vision," or "This is my word," or "This is," and never revisit. No, you've got to revisit that thing on a regular basis. Remember, I talked about each night I go over what I've done and what I'm grateful for accomplishing, and I'm grateful for what I will accomplish.
That attitude of gratitude.
That's right. And you talked about those numbers. You got to put a number on that thing. And many of us are not comfortable with that. I wasn't always comfortable with it. I am still becoming comfortable with the whole number aspect.
That's right.
But I recognize as I recognize it and as I do it, that's when the doors open. That's when God, the universe, begins to recognize my seriousness about the matter. And God's like, look, I've been waiting for you. I'm able.
That's right.
Take me
Let me tell you, you talking about me preaching the word. That right there is a word within itself. I read this book every single year. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
That's right.
Every single year. And he talks about that attitude and gratitude. you're speaking it into your life twice a day,
Yep.
being able to meditate, visualize it, see it. All the other books came from that. He took 30 years to write that book. And so when I look at Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I look at all these other books, I see the principles. Awaken the Giant Within. I see all the principles, the 13 principles from that book that I'm able to use every single day. And he says, write it down, revisit it, have gratitude for it, even before you get it. He said auto suggestions. He literally is talking about your mastermind group, which you and I have worked on mastermind groups forever. We've sat at, a little restaurant in Brooklyn. I won't call the names and protect the guilty, right?
I miss doing that.
And made it plain. And then when it came into fruition, we would say, remember we wrote this workshop down? Remember we wrote this day down? And now look how we're able to accomplish it. And so you talking about a word, that in itself is a word. You have to be able to see where you're going in order to get there. You cannot drive looking back.
No, ma'am.
Because you're going to crash.
That's right.
You have to be able to see, be able to understand, and be able to use a paradigm shift, be able to change things that you need to change and have a direction. I can't just get in my car and start driving down south and I'm driving north. I'm never going to get down south. But if I have a plan and I have a map and I have my GPS, I can get to where I'm going. And that's all you're talking about right now.
Right.
You said calendar it. You said to write your to-do list and be able to scratch things off. Me too. I'm visual as well. I even put pictures. Instead of having, I have a vision book. People have a vision board. I have a vision book. A part of that vision book is my health, because your health is your wealth, right?
Yeah.
A part of that vision book is my finances, because thou shalt prosper, right? And there's a great book about it. The rabbi wrote, thou shalt prosper. Thou shalt prosper.
Rabbi Lapin.
That's right.
Girl, I may be pronouncing his name wrong. It's Lapin. It could be Lapin. I apologize to the rabbi. But
my God. Yes. And then I have a vision about my family. How do I want to show up in my family? How do I want my family to show up to me? How do I want to show up to the world and my organizations and my businesses and all of those things that I do? And I have a vision book and I could turn the pages. I remember when I said, I'm going to work for the first Black president of the United States. I created a vision book, being at the table with President Barack Obama, being in the room, being in front of the camera, being in front of the stage, having this vision, having these words, being able to use my knowledge, skills, and ability to bring to the table. And I became a regional advocate. I didn't even know what the Office of Advocacy was. But it was a perfect position for what I needed to do at that time. And I covered New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And I did say that's how I met my producer. My producer now is in the Virgin Islands.
Oh,
wow. This is how God works. This is so amazing to sit here and have this conversation with you at the top of the year, because it can only be great from here. And so I just want to thank you for just sharing all of these best practices and big ideas. And there's so much more to come. So talk to me a little bit more about now some of those. We talked about the barriers, and there's always going to be a ton of barriers. Being a single parent can be a barrier unless you have the right network. Not having the financial stability you need to be a barrier unless you know how to go get it, right? All of these things can be barriers, but you overcame all of these barriers and you shared some of the best practices, and they even gave some nuggets about how to use your technology to work smarter and not harder. And now, we got a few more minutes, and I can't believe the time is almost up, but I want you to talk a little bit about big ideas. What's next? What's on the horizon? What are we thinking? We're great. We're going to be great. God has made us great. Like, what are we doing?
One of my big ideas is working closely with a good friend of mine, a sister. Her name is Dr. Terry Coaxum. Let me tell you, you asked for it. Okay, you didn't know what you were going to get. When we did that Unstoppable conference some years back,
that was amazing.
I've been asked when another one is going to happen.
That was amazing.
I've been asked.
Really amazing.
For those of you that are watching, Terry Coaxum, she was, I'm talking to your people now, I'm not talking to you. Terry Coaxum, y'all listen to me. This woman was my guest. It was just she and I, and she was fantastic. The response of people, what you fed into them. So that's on my horizon to get
now
another Unstoppable Summit. But to just really, two things, as pastor of the church, I want to make sure that we are continuing to do what God has called us to do.
That's right.
We are in Upper Harlem, the part of Harlem that's forgotten about. People know about 125th Street.
That's
People
right.
even know about 145th Street or 135th or what have, but we're all the way up in 150s. That's
right.
I mean, like, what's up there? The Polo Ground, Marker Playground. We're in the heart of Yankee Stadium in the Bronx.
That's right.
That area is so forgotten about. During COVID, we were the first church or nonprofit organization, period, to give testing. That was not happening in that part of Harlem at all.
Wow.
Then we gave vaccinations. That was not happening. We want to continue serving the community. We want to continue doing what God has called us to do in that part of Harlem. And my business as an entrepreneur, I feel, when I tell you, I really feel this whole thing about diversity, equity, inclusion. And someone has told me that I really need to take it a step further, because I don't know if you know, last year I was voted one of the 100 most influential faith-based leaders in the state of New York.
That's right.
City and state has this.
That's right. I'm not surprised. That's right. That's right.
Okay, and I know you've been on that list too.
Yep.
Okay, but for faith-based leaders, and I looked at that. I said, you know what? I want to make sure that this is not just some title or some a recognition that's but it's something that's really going to.
It gave you another charge. It's another charge. Every time they add the rest of these things, you're like, okay, so what this means is I got another charge.
Yeah. So with that, with my ministry, and people are saying oftentimes, how am I going to be able to do the ministry and do the corporate work with the diversity, equity, inclusion? Look, you know me, I don't say no, do I? And so someone they put it in my spirit that says, you need to look at ready. I'm like, ready? What are you talking about? Yeah, I'm ready. Whatever. No, they're like ready. REDI, religious equity, diversity, and inclusion, which is
huge. That's what's
because in companies, okay, we talk about race, we talk about ethnicity, we talk about place of origin, language, we talk about age, we talk about, I do this thing on generations as well. All of these different things as far as the dimensions, the big dimensions of diversity, sexual orientation and gender and the whole, even weight. But we don't really talk about religion still. But religion has to be, people have a right to worship.
That's right.
How they are led. And companies, okay, we talk about freedom of religion. Companies have to understand that people who worship differently have a right to be a part of the organization and to continue. If you are Muslim, you have a right to wear your garb. If you are a Sikh, you have a right to wear your head covering if you are a male and not be made fun of, because that is your right. So, I've already done a lot of ecumenical work. I've worked with the Jewish Theological Seminary. I've worked with some of the other, the imams in the area. And so this is something that I'm looking at very seriously, because I think that might be a corner to turn. But for 2024, I'm looking to really just ramp up my business as a keynoter. I'm looking, with the whole inclusion.
That's right.
I'm looking to ramp up my business as a facilitator and trainer with DEI, with corporations, because I look at that as a calling as well.
It is. And you're pouring into people every single time you have access. Every single time. And I think that is what another kindred thing we have in common, because I want to die empty. God didn't give me these knowledge, skills, and ability for me to sit on my talent. He gave me access to individuals to be able to speak into them. And you do that every single time you get access. And I don't mean just a microphone or a platform. I mean, every single time you get access. And you're always it's so flawless for you, right?
Oh, God.
So, even I had the pleasure of going to your bridal shower and listen to some of the testimonies and hear how all of your life you've been able to encourage and empower young women and young men to do the things that they're called to do. And so I just want to commend you for that. You act like that's an easy feat. That is not easy.
One more. Bliss by Brown. What is Bliss by Brown? Well, I'm a Prepare and Rich facilitator. Okay, I do premarital counseling through the
Mm-hmm.
Prepare and Rich program. And my husband also is a facilitator with Prepare and Rich, but he is also a recovery coach. And
Wow.
so, yeah, and he's got his own thing. I'm not just saying he's fantabulous. I made that word up. That's what preachers do. I'm not just saying he's fantabulous because he's my husband. I mean, that came with me marrying him. I'm like, yeah, you are fantabulous. I'm going to marry you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'll say yes to the ring because
As
you're
you should.
fantabulous.
As you
You know?
should.
But he's a recovery coach, and his ministry, his thing is helping people who have had substance abuse issues, helping individuals who are making their way back into society. He's big on that. I mean,
Okay.
humongous. And so this whole idea of Bliss by Brown, working with couples, we've done counseling together with other individuals, and they said the unique thing about it is that we are an African American couple, a Black couple doing premarital counseling. I'm an ordained minister, as you know. I married people, but he also is able to do such as well. So that's another thing
Bliss
that's
by
on the
Brown.
horizon.
Yo,
Bliss
these are
by
great.
Brown.
I mean, you got to come back on the show. I mean, our time is up. So we
Anytime.
can talk about this the whole time, but this Bliss by Brown is something to really have, to pour into the audience, because we do need counseling in certain areas, and faith without works is dead, right? And so if you want your marriage to work, or you want your relationships to work, you want your home to work, we
Yes.
need certain skill sets to be able to be successful. And so I want to thank you so much for being on the
Thank
Coaxum Report,
you.
for pouring into the audience today. And again, don't be surprised when folks hit you up and tell you they saw you someplace. And this is also reposts on Tempo. And so I just want to thank you so much for being a part of this. We got to do another Unstoppable conference that's coming up this year. So for those of you, just tune in, and Dr. Lisa Jenkins Brown will let you know when it's going to happen. Thank you so much for being on the Coaxum Report. Take care and be blessed. Thank you.